Summer in the hills, those hazy days I do remember. We were running still, had the whole world at our feet, watching seasons change, our roads were lined.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Freemason Podcast, where we have nothing to do with Freemasonry. My last name is Mason, and I was in a mental prison, so now Freemason. But this is Jairek Robbins, and Jairek, welcome to the show. Awesome to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I don't know what the sign is, but hopefully I throw the right one up to be in the club.
Yeah. No symbolism here on this episode. Yeah. So cool, man. Well, like I said, we keep this super conversational. I would love to start with, your life, anything you want to talk about, any main obstacles you've had, particularly because this is a health channel. It would be awesome. I love that you were just talking about vegetable juices. Keep things in the health scope. Obviously, we'll still talk about business and stuff, but I would love to hear about your health journeys, health struggles, and how health plays a role in your life and your coaching. Just so everyone knows, Jairek Robbins is a world-class business and life coach. So yeah.
Cool. So I'll throw this out there to start with, and then I'll take you on a journey with how this came about. The first piece I'd start with is I remember we were doing a training specifically for the pararescue jumpers, who are kind of like the Navy SEALs of the Air Force. And these are elite soldiers. So they're strong enough to go in, fight like Navy SEALs. But then they're smart enough that they could take their backpack off and do full surgery under heavy fire in crazy conditions. So they're wildly strong and have the endurance and the resiliency, but also wildly intelligent to the point that they're a surgeon in the same scope. It's amazing. And so as we're talking to them, we're talking about increasing performance and all these bits and pieces, which they invited me out to come and talk to them about achieving higher performance, which I laughed and rolled my eyes and was like, okay, how are you going to get these humans to be better? Like, they're already the best. And they're always thinking of how could I be better? Like, that's what they're hunting for all day long. And then they're doing it. And you're like, okay, I don't know what I can add, but I'll poke around and see if I can find something. I found something. I'll tell you about that later. But the concept was, we brought up something simple, which was, wait a minute. If you got captured by the enemy, horrible thing to bring up with soldiers, not fluffy topic whatsoever, because it's reality in some cases. If you were captured by the enemy and they really wanted to jack you up, mentally, emotionally, physically, they want to mess you up, they want to break your spirit as a human, what would they do? And it's like, oh, they knew way more stuff than I ever wanted to know. But we came to a conclusion that three things would really jack a human up. Number one, sleep deprivation. If you take away their sleep, it is called mental and psychological torture, emotional torture. It breaks the spirit of a human. Bright lights, loud music, buckets of water. Like, you do it long enough, the person just will comply to whatever you want them to do. They'll give up because they just want sleep. They just want the ability to replenish some of their energy and refuel their body in some cases. And so number one is sleep deprivation. Number two, if you totally wanted to jack them up and you took away their nutrition, you take away the right fuel to their body. Like, in the movies, luckily, knock on wood, I've never had to experience this, but in the movies, they give you like a bowl of slop with one pea in it, and they're like, good luck. You're like, ah!
And half of it spills as they give it to you, right?
Yeah, and your body starts to decompose. Like, you run out of energy. Your muscles decompose. Like, your body just kind of breaks down and shrivels. And it's a horrible experience, but it happens. And then the third thing, if they wanted to jack with you, they really wanted to mess you up, they tie you up. They like physically bind you so you can't move, which muscle atrophy kicks in if there's so many. I mean, imagine falling asleep on your hand versus spending 5 days with your arms tied in the same position. Like, not only can you not move them, but if they untie you and say, run, good luck. Like, you stand up, wobble, and like Bambi leg fall over and you're face first in the ground. Because your body can't function without consistent movement of strengthening and re-getting the blood flow and muscles moving. And so we would call this literally physical, mental, and emotional torture if another human being did it to you. But then I had a crazy question. I remember speaking to another audience and saying, hey, as entrepreneurs, what are the first three things you give up when you get really busy grinding and hustling? And all of a sudden the whole room looked at me and were like, whoa. And I remember laughing and be like, stop fucking torturing yourself. Excuse the language, but why are you torturing yourself? If another human did it to you, you would call it wartime torture. Torture. You do it to yourself, you call it high five self. I was working hard that week. You're like, what? Are we stupid? Like, I don't think so. Why are we doing stuff like this to ourselves? And so in looking back, taking on a little journey, I have to ask the question, was I always paying attention to those things? No. You know, geez, middle school, I guess it's high school, pre-high school, right in there. I was 5'9", 225 pounds. I was not jacked muscular-wise. I ran, you know, my speedy 18-minute long mile. So obviously I was super quick on the toes there, and not really. I was slow and big. And I would eat an extra large cheese pizza by myself on a Friday night. Why? Because I could, and it tasted delicious, and I just kept going. I remember fast forward, one time I was in college and I bought a bag of, like a 3-pound bag of those mini candies to give out for Halloween. And I was stressed out. This is when people do it oftentimes. I was stressed and I was studying for a test. And I started just reaching one at a time for these little candies. And about 2 hours of studying went by and I didn't know. I ate pretty much the whole 3-pound bag of candy, assorted Butterfingers and whatever else was in there. And I looked at it like, holy crap. I ate a whole 3-pound bag of candy by accident. Oops. I remember not knowing how the body really works and deciding to do a cleanse I bought from like Costco the next day. And after putting that much crap in my body, I tried to cleanse it out all at once and broke out with hives for the next 2 days, because the skin, I learned, is the largest detox organ in your body. And all of a sudden, I tried to mass detox a whole bunch of crap I had just inserted. And the only way it could find its way out of my body was through my skin. So I'm lying there with giant blotches all over my arms being like, why is this happening to me? And in reality, it's just learning how the system worked. And I didn't know how the system works back then. I thought, well, you know, if I took a bunch of crap in, I would just cleanse it out with using this cleanse thing from Whole Foods, and that would work. Not knowing that the biggest organ is your skin. And then secondary, I started to throw up, started to have diarrhea. And at first, when these things happen, we tend to reach for things to fix the symptom. I have diarrhea, I need a diarrhea pill. I'm throwing up, I need an anti-throw up thing. My skin's blotched up, I need whatever the spray is that'll get the blotches to go away. And we start clogging the entire system instead of being like, wait a minute, if all this crap is trying to push its way out of my system and the only way it can get the fastest evacuation route is out of my skin, I need to somehow help it get the heck out of my body. And the better I can help it get out, the sooner this stuff goes away, because there's no longer all that toxins trying to get out, you know, in evacuation mode. And if I have diarrhea, now this one's interesting. I've also lived in Uganda and over in Africa, and there you can literally die from too much diarrhea anywhere you can, because it's too much of it. So you need to slow it down a little, but not clog it up. And as gross as that sounds, there's truth in this. You know, you need to realize there's something in your system. If you have diarrhea, it's something in your system is trying to evacuate the body as fast as possible, and your body is trying to get it the heck out. And so using the elimination systems of your body and saying, oh, I have to throttle some of them, otherwise they can become deadly. But as long as it's throttling it and doing it an even amount, and you're rehydrating and keeping hydrated there, it's something that your body is literally trying to eliminate as fast as humanly possible. And so the realization that when the paradigm shifts, that it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm sick. It's, oh my gosh, my body has something to eliminate. How can I help it get this stuff out quicker? Like when my skin's all blotchy, if I went and sat in an infrared sauna for a little bit, I help sweat. I open up the pores and get more toxins out. It doesn't make the blotches go away right away, but it helps the excess toxins get out. And all of a sudden, as they're out, I drink tons and tons of water, which makes me have to go to the bathroom, which eliminates extra toxins from my pee. You know, eat some healthy fruits and foods, makes me have to poop more. All of a sudden, it gets out that way. And in this process of mass elimination, the toxins are out, and then all of a sudden, it heals up. And it goes back to homeostasis and normal again. And so a lot of this stuff I had to learn by, number one, making some really bad decisions. Number two, shifting my paradigm and mentality around this stuff. And then number three, learning how my body deals with it. I've learned one thing over the years is no human is the same when it comes to these processes. All of us are different, and we have to learn how our unique ecosystem works in that process. And then we have to learn our own way, and we have to practice kind of guiding ourselves through it. So my 2 cents around all this stuff, when we talk about these elements, there were times in my life where I wasn't sleeping very well. You know, I thought 6 hours of sleep was all I needed. Go to sleep at midnight, wake up at 6 a.m., go. And I learned 7.5 to 8 hours is a sweet spot. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I'm gonna have to change my ways. I gotta psychologically change what I believe about it. I gotta physically change the habits about it. And then I have to measure and adjust what still works best for me. Because over 8 hours doesn't work very well in my nervous system. You know, 7.5 seems to be my sweet spot. But for some people, it's 8.5 or 9. I mean, if you look at some of the pro athletes in the world, and this is the other piece, not only to survive, but then to thrive, your comparison. Who are you comparing yourself to? I remember talking to a client one time when we were asking about, you know, what is your 20-year vision in your life? You're going to be 67, 80 years old. What does that look like to you? And they're like, ugh, I don't even want to think about that. How depressing. I'm going to be so old. I went, wow. If you close your eyes and imagine yourself at 80 years old, what do you see? Now, whatever you see is where you're headed. So the psychology shift of where you're headed will determine the entire different path you're going to take to get there, and if you're even excited about it. So I'll stop there. I don't know if any questions are in there, but a lot of thought that brought me to where I am today.
Totally. And talking about the old age concept, you know, one thing I'm seeing is that literally people are turning to stone. It's like as people are getting older, people are just calcifying. So when that individual you're talking to thinks about them at 80, if they're on that track of eating normal standard American diet, they'll literally be hunched over, like turning into stone, organs not working, skin not working, like and I see that. It's almost like I can see where that path leads to, you know, in our common culture by looking at the elderly, you know. But the detox that we're talking about here, the detox really does remove the toxins and the calcium deposits and all, especially distilled water, so that we can actually age more appropriately, more in tune with the way nature intended for us to age, you know. So even the concept of old age, I feel, is a consensus. It's like I'm sorry, that's not the right word. It's yeah, it is. It's consensual. It's people saying I agree to age at this rate. I agree that when I turn 60, I should be getting sick. I agree that when I turn 70, I should be close to dying, or 80. And it's total BS. Reshifting the paradigm is absolutely crucial. I agree with you. Yeah.
One thing that helps in reshaping the paradigm is getting new role models. I always ask people, just real simple, who are your top 3 role models when it comes to being of older age? And most people are like, what do you mean? Role models? Like, can you give me a better example? I'm like, yeah, close your eyes and imagine yourself at 80 years old, and what do you see in your mind? And most people see, oh, my back. Like, that's what they see. They see hunched over, kind of tired, old, like getting out of their big old rocking chair going, oh, my back, it's so sore. That's literally what people imagine in their mind when you ask them as a group. And I say, how many people, and I always use an example, I give this presentation, I say, how many people see this? And I throw up on the screen a lady named Sister Madonna Bruder. Her name is the Iron Nun. And you've probably seen the Nike commercial in the last couple of years. At 82 years old, she was competing in the Ironman competition.
Sorry, guys, talking about that Ironman lady, yeah?
Okay, so I say, close your eyes, imagine yourself at 82 years old. What do you see? Most people say, oh, my back. And I would say, okay, what about this? And I throw up on the slides when we do presentations and talking about the future vision. And I say, how many people see this in your vision? And it's this 82-year-old woman on a bike cycling in the Ironman race, doing the 100 and something, mile bike ride with a 2.5-mile swim, and then the full marathon afterwards. And so I show the picture. I say, how many people saw that? Raise your hand. And maybe 1 or 2 people are like, oh, yeah, I could see myself doing that. But that's not what they originally saw. And I said, people like to say, oh, she must have been an athlete her whole life. She must be genetically blessed. It's like, no, this lady is a 100-pound nun who didn't start doing any type of physical races until she was in her 60s. And she started by walking like a block a day. And then eventually in her 70s, she did over 100 triathlons in her decade of her 70s. It's like 10 a year. And then, in her 80s, she's now competing in the Ironman competition. And I think it was last year or the year before, at 84 years old, she's the oldest living person to complete the whole Ironman race, which is wild. Wow. And it's like, well, is that what you saw? And I say, okay, I'll give you another shot. Close your eyes. Now imagine yourself at 100 years old. 100 years old. What would you look like? How would you feel? How would you move? What would be possible? How strong would you be? How flexible would you be? How much strength would you have? Like, what do you see at 100 years old? And I say, I'm going to stop real quick. First, before anybody answers this question, raise your hand if in your mind you didn't even make it that far. And at least 20% of every group's hand will go up and be like, no, I don't even think I'm going to make it to 100, to be honest. And you're like, whoa! I guarantee they're going to find a way to disappear before 100 shows up in their life because they don't even believe it's possible. And it's like, oh my God, that's crazy. With the technology coming today and all the different stuff that's going to be available in the next 5, 10, 20 years, the ability to extend our lifespan will be remarkable. I mean, we've already expanded it. I think in the last 100 years, if I might be off on this number, I think it was the last 100 years we've expanded the lifespan from like 39 years old all the way to like 80-something years old. Just in 100 years. And we didn't have anywhere near the technology we had in this last 100 years. With all the technology we have today, the ability to regrow organs, the ability to 3D print stuff, the ability for nanotechnology mixed with DNA splicing to all come together, we're going to have an amazing opportunity. 100 might seem young at some point, which is mind-boggling to us now, but when it happens, we'll look back and be like, huh. It's like nowadays, people live to 80 years old. We're not like, oh my gosh, really? How did they do it? I mean, it's a feat, it's an accomplishment. We're like, wow, that's amazing. But it's not like, oh my God, you're the only human I've ever seen that's lived this long. Like, there's tons of them. It's normalized. Just like 100 will become normalized at one point in the future. And so this concept of, as you start to stretch, and I say, see yourself at 100, one, is it possible? Now, if you see yourself at 100, how many people are like, even more? Oh, my back, even more. And some people are like, oh yeah, I'm even more jacked up. For other people, I say, what about this guy? And I throw another slide up, and it's a gentleman named Robert Marchand, at over 100 years old, was competing in a cycling race of, a pace race to beat his own record to be the fastest person to do like 100 kilometers or something on a bike. It was amazing. And he was going at record pace. He wasn't going at, some slow ass pace. Like, he was really moving. Over 100 years old doing this. I was like, okay, so let's start somewhere. What does your future look like in your own mind? What do you believe is possible? Where do you see yourself going? Now, if that's what you see as possible, if you see yourself as an athlete, as an incredible human who's wildly flexible and strong and has endurance at this older stage of life, now we got to work backwards. What actually adds up to that? And this is what's fun. I always draw a chart. I don't have my little chart in here. It's in the other room. But I always draw a chart. And if we use this kind of screen, and actually, let me just see if I can draw it on a piece of paper for you.
Yeah, or you can go grab it. It's fine.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I have a giant erase board I'm going to drag in the other room.
Yeah.
Okay, I love this thing. Let's do a little whiteboard sesh. So here we go. If we've got a little chart, can you see that?
Yep.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting here at X. We got to think of what's over here, kind of this other side. And if we think of like, let's call this the 99% average, right? And so if we're looking at 99% average, we got to think of what is the average human around the world, let's say in the US, but what's the average person's health look like right now?
Absolute shit.
Well,
absolute shit.
Walk outside and look around.
Yeah.
People are obese, people have diabetes, people in their 30s, they have diabetes, they're obese, they're struggling with their health, they're overweight, they're unhappy, they're not doing real well. So that's their health. What about their love life? What do people's relationships look like right now? Well, the good news is the divorce rate is declining, but almost half of people are unhappy, unsatisfied, frustrated, not deeply in love, can't find the one, can't figure out how to make it work, not doing the work. So that's not working out for most people.
And if they find all of
financially?
those things, then they can't get it up because of their illness.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or it goes too fast.
Yeah.
It's the other side.
Yeah.
Can't keep it up.
Yeah.
But then, so you look at relationships, you look at health, you look at, what about finances? They're usually not, like, most people aren't just being like, shit, I got so much money, I don't know what to do with it. Like, not the case. So most people aren't doing so well in most areas of life. Now, it doesn't mean they're not good people. It's just they're doing what average does, and average isn't that big in our country. Now, let's draw another little markup here. So let's go up here and throw a Y. And we're going to call this the 1%, which will piss some people off in the beginning. Because you throw up a 1% mark and say, how many people want to become the 1%? And you'll get a pretty fierce reaction. People going like, those greedy bastards, the bankers, the 1%, no, those are evil people. According to the news who shaped our perception, it says being the 1% is a bad thing. But you're telling me, just to recalibrate if you're watching this and listening in, that you don't want to be the 1% of contributors to your community, the 1% who give more to your church and your community than anyone else around you? You're telling me you don't want to have the 1% of love lives in relationship where you're the 1% of people that are happy, passionately, deeply, wildly in love with each other, who can't think of anything but wanting to spend time with that human and cherish the ground that they walk on? You're telling me that you want to be the 1% of parents who's been able to raise productive, loved, cared for, true, good citizens of the world and shape humanity? You don't want to be the 1% of money? Okay, great. Well, 1% of people who earn over 400 grand a year? You tell me you don't want to be the 1%? Please. You're just allowed the media to shape your perception of what the 1% is. Most people I meet, honestly, when we look at this little chart, they don't really want to be the 1%. When you look at their vision boards, they want to be up here of the 0.001%. I don't see people who have normal shit on their vision boards. When you look at their vision boards, you see stacks of cash and planes and this amazing love life and these incredible houses and all this stuff that they pull out of magazines. And that is not the 1%. That is the 0.001% of life. And here's what's challenges, though. When we look at people's health, to go back to this topic, if you want to experience the 1% of health, or you want to become that lady who runs triathlons in 80s, this is the 0.001% of humans, you cannot expect an average daily routine to ever get you those kind of results. It doesn't add up, if that makes sense. Doing these habits will never somehow magically go, oh my God, look, I got the 1% life by doing normal shit every day. It doesn't add up. The numbers don't match. So if you can work backwards from where you ultimately want to be in the future, we have to ask the question, what are the necessary routines, habits, and actions that'll actually get us to the result? So right now, if you're watching, grab a pen and paper and ask yourself, if you want to have the 1% of health, be healthier than any other human that you know, and it's not a comparison, it's not being better than someone else, it's just saying you want to be the 1% of what you're capable of being. If that's what you're aiming for, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, relationship health, if you want that kind of health, what are the daily habits you need every single day that'll actually build that kind of health in your world? And I'm guessing from other guests on your show and they'll learn lots of those habits, what to do to actually be really healthy. And I'll tell you, people are like, I don't know. I mean, if I could figure that out, it would solve everything. I'll call bullshit on that, because most of us know if we eat more vegetables and cut out crap foods, we will tend to be healthier. Eat healthy, work out. Oh my God. But that's not an average habit nowadays. Most people don't work out and don't eat healthy. And it's not because it's not available. Rarely will I accept that excuse. You know, if it's not available, I used to teach organic farming in a village in Uganda. We took oil barrels, cleaned them out, filled them with potting soil, made a little tiny circle using a coffee can through the middle.
Just come more this way. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
We used a little tiny coffee can to dig out a hole in the middle, put chicken wire in the middle, filled it with compost, and then took the can, and if you imagine dividing it into eights, so halfway and then like that, we created 8 little sections and then used a metal, I don't even know what's called, a corker, I guess, and drilled holes into the side of the metal can. And in each little section, put a different vegetable. If you live in New York City in an apartment and have one of those little balconies, put a freaking garden on it and grow your own veggies. It's not that hard. It's possible.
I got right there. You see that?
There you go. Like people tend to throw out these excuses. It just takes effort, and it takes deciding that you're going to do 1% kind of activities instead of you doing 99% activities, hoping or trying to manifest the shit up here when you're doing shit that adds up here. So you got to be willing to do these kind of things, and getting 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. Believe it or not, besides our friends who smoke way too much weed, getting 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep, though sometimes I'll say stuff and they'll be like, see, I told you it was great. I'm like, okay, not the fuck what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about for normal people doing normal shit. If you have kids and a job and a husband or a wife and all this other stuff, it is difficult to get high quality sleep. I get it. But that's the difference. Do you settle for going, it's too hard? Or do you say, hey, I'm going to shut off all the screens 1 hour before sleep time and get the blue light out of my house. Hey, I'm going to save up and invest in those blackout curtains to get all the light out of my room. Hey, I'm going to turn the temperature down to 68 degrees and keep it prime sleeping temperature in my house. Hey, I'm going to make sure I don't drink coffee at least, after 4 p.m. any day if I'm going to get high quality sleep. Hey, I'm going to wake up in the morning, get outside and get some vitamin D on my skin, sunlight, so that my hormone cycles start cycling at the right time in the day and get me prepared for sleep at night. None of this stuff is rocket science. It's all available online. Google it. And so if it's there and there's videos like this talking about it, now it's no longer, I don't know, learn it. I don't know what to do, learn it. You know what to do. It's available. You can Google this stuff for free online. Find it. Now you got to live it. Second step. Living it means you got to apply it. This is the difference between the 99% and the 1%. It's applying what you know. It's taking these little bits of knowledge and saying, hey, I'm going to do that every day. I'm going to try that. And I'm not going to try it. I'm going to commit to doing it. I'm going to create a little chart. And each day I'm going to check my little box and give myself a gold star on my little chart each day. And as long as I hit 30 days in a row, then I've certainly given it a chance and I'll see how I feel. And I guarantee you'll feel better. Now, as this starts to happen, the other thing you need to realize, because we're talking about this differentiation, if you're watching a video like this online and you're tuning into stuff like this and you have the technology to do this, you got to realize when you look back at this chart, even though a lot of what we're considering to be average and normal to 99%, if you're watching this online and you have access to this technology and you have more than $10 in your bank account, you are the 1% of the world.
Wow.
Because the majority of the world lives on $2 a day. And so, little paradigm shift. As much as we're talking about things that can make you better, the other shift you have to make psychologically is realizing you're already part of that 1% of the planet who has access to technology and information and experiences way more than other people on this earth have anywhere near that kind of resources available to them. And so this was also a paradigm shift in my health. When I went and lived in a village in Uganda for 3 months teaching organic farming, I came back and realized I didn't need a whole lot mentally to be full. And all of a sudden, if you look at the basis of psychology, the basis of a human, there's 3 statements they have to kind of rate themselves on. Number 1 is, I have enough. I have enough. This is survival. Do you have enough to survive? Do you have enough to thrive? Do you have enough? 0 to 100. How much do you relate to the statement, I have enough? 2, I'm loved enough. This is survival. If people feel like they are not loved, if this little bucket is empty in their heart, they will do some pretty shitty things trying to get love from people around them. So I am enough. I'm loved enough. 3rd one. Or I'm sorry. I have enough. I'm loved enough. The 3rd one. I am enough. Self-confidence. A person that looks themselves in the mirror and says, hey, I'm enough. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do my makeup or hair in a certain way to finally be enough. Like, I'm enough. It's just me. And as people fill these 3 psychological pieces, I have enough to survive and thrive and be myself. I'm loved enough from the sources of love that I give myself or need from in the world. And I am enough. All of a sudden, at that moment, a person can start to evolve beyond the basics and start to think of stuff like how to transform their life. But you got to fulfill the base before you can go up. It's a humanistic point of view. I get it. It's a new psychology over the last so many centuries and decades here. But at the same time, there's truth in it. When people can fulfill those base needs, they choose different things to eat. They choose different ways to express themselves. They choose different ways to show up. They choose different ways to treat each other. They choose different ways to treat themselves. If someone doesn't feel like they're enough, they look in the mirror and tear themselves apart. Someone doesn't feel like they're really loved, they look in the mirror, and it starts with self-love. You know, do you take time every day, if you want a simple action, to fill up and feel like you're enough and you're loved enough? Do you take time every day, look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself 5 things you really, truly love and appreciate about yourself? Most people, it's wildly fucking uncomfortable to do because we're not good at that. We're not good at looking yourself eye to eye in the mirror and saying, wow, what do I love about myself? Fuck, I don't know. I don't like the way my eyelids are. I don't like the way my cheeks are so puffy. We know all the shit we don't like about ourselves, but do you know the things you like about yourself?
We're masters at what we don't like about ourselves.
Most people are.
Yeah, masters about what we don't like about our life, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so what happens is when you start to fill up these basic psychological elements of a human, you start to get a different human. Because I've never met someone that says, really, truly, in their heart of hearts, they have enough. Now, there was also a psychological study done, and this has to do with human health, where they figured out how much is enough, what qualifies. And usually, if you write down all of your bills, so your mortgage, your rent, your car payment, your gas, your electric bill, if you write down all your bills, and you know, whatever your hard expenses, like this is how much it costs for me to keep going every month, whatever your hard expenses, and then you add that plus a little bit more. That is where the maximum point of happiness exists in people's worlds financially. This is mental health, mental and emotional health. The maximum point of happiness is what you need plus a little bit more. Maximum point of happiness. Well, people are like, well, if I could just make more, if I could just have more, then everything in my life will be amazing. The research shows for a while, as it starts to, so, you know, let's pull out our whiteboard again. Let me get rid of this guy.
I'm totally listening in here. I'm just deleting some files again, but we're still rolling. Go ahead. Yep.
So if this is how much your bills cost and you have a little bit more, so this is the more you have, for a while, the research shows as you continue to go up, there's a minor happiness. So there's lots of happiness found right in here in this little extra. There's little bits, and let me give you a better visual. There's little bits of happiness found up here, just little bits, lots in that little section, but as you keep going, just little bits of happiness. Eventually, when you hit a certain amount, your happiness starts to go down because now there's too much stress involved. Too much responsibility.
With what? With keeping the wealth, with not losing the wealth, or with caring about menial things? What do you think?
Everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything. Protecting it, managing it. Is this all that people want from me? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do to grow it? Is this even enough? How would I do from here? The stress level starts to increase, which takes the happiness level down. So if a human being, and some people are not optimizing for happiness. Some people are like, happiness, I don't give a shit. I don't care about happiness. But for the people who are optimizing for happiness, it's what you need plus a little bit more is where the ideal happiness goal is. And all of a sudden you have someone who's radically satisfied with their life. It's all that I need and a little bit more and I'm good. And it's like, wow, that little bit more you could take a trip with, you could take care of family with, you could give to your church with, you could travel with, you could do anything with. Just a little bit more than we actually need. And there's this beautiful freedom that exists right there. It's not winning the lottery. It's not having a $200 million bank account. It's not becoming a billionaire or, you know, being the next Zuckerberg or the next person that brings the amazing app to life that makes them $13 billion in 6 months. Like, that's not where the happiness is. All that's wonderful. Nothing wrong with it. I like it. Shit, why not go for it? Mm-hmm. But finding that ability to be psychologically sound and happy even before you get there is freedom. Because one thing I've also found on this journey, one point I was in Uganda talking about health, I was told I had 6 days left to live. And I remember going, oh crap, at 20 years old, that was not the fucking plan. I did not plan at 20 years old to be told I had 6 days left. I was like, oh shit, took a wrong turn. So I sat down and I thought about it, and it made me come to the conclusion of asking the question, if I only honestly had 6 days left to live, how would I live these 6 days so that if I were to die on the 6th, I could high five myself on the way out and say, hey, life well lived, man. You did it. Everything, you're good. And I had to come up with qualifiers, a way to measure this, a way to know if it was true or not. And so, you know, I had to think of what could qualify as really, truly a life well lived. Now, a friend of mine, he got in an accident years later. He was pouting over a girl that broke up with him, and he flipped a Jeep. And he came up with these qualifiers. He said, here's some qualifiers. When you're faced with death, he almost died when the Jeep flipped. He said, when you're faced with death, there's 3 things you really got to answer. And the first is, when life gave you opportunity to live fully, to take life by the horns and go for it, to really get out there and go for it, did you do it? Did you take the risk? Did you go for it? Did you storm out there and take the opportunity and just ride it out there and see what's possible, see what you're really capable of? So number 1, did you really live? Did you live fully when life gave you the chance? Number 2, when life gave you the chance to love another human being, whether your neighbor, your friend, a random stranger, did you give them all your heart and soul, every ounce you could stir up? Or out of fear, out of past pains, out of uncertainties, did you hold something back and limit the love that you gave? Knowing that you could have given more but decided not to in that moment, that leads to regret. So did you really love with every ounce of your heart and soul every time you had the opportunity to? And that takes freaking balls and guts. Because you have to have the guts to face the uncertainty of you could get hurt again, but you're willing to do it because you know that if you were to die tomorrow, you'd rather die pouring every ounce of love into people you care about than holding back out of fear that it might sting a little on the other side. And then the final piece, did you matter? Did you do something that will continue rippling into the world far beyond your physical presence on this planet? I think, oh, those are tough questions. And I remember at 20 years old, lying in a hospital cot in a little village clinic in Uganda. I didn't speak local language. I spoke broken language just to get by. No one really spoke English except for the doctor. And I was by myself, no family, no friends, totally on the other side of Earth. There's no way I could get back home if I only had 6 days because they would quarantine me on the way. There's no way they let me fly through London that sick. They would put me in a freaking quarantine hospital because I was bad. Like, I had vertigo. I couldn't stand up. I'd fall over and literally I'd stand up and face plant because I couldn't tell which way was up. I remember having to crawl down a hallway at the hospital to the bathroom. And, it's a horrible description, but things were exiting and evacuating my body through both ends very quickly.
From malaria, right? This is from the malaria.
From the malaria.
Yeah.
From the malaria. And so I would try to eat food, and it would find its way out both ends quickly. And I couldn't get to the bathroom fast enough. I would literally stand up, face plant, and crawl to the bathroom to try to get this stuff into the toilet fast enough. It was horrible. Horrible experience. Now, at the same time, going through that experience, feeling like, man, if I only have these 6 days left, how am I going to live these 6 days so that I can know that I really lived, I really loved, and I freaking mattered. I did something beyond just myself. And I was like, well, let me ask myself, am I really living? And I was like, well, at this stage of my life, at 20 years old, I had just got done on a 3-month cruise, literally in university, called Semester at Sea, where I sailed all the way around the world on a ship. I had just got done 3 days before I went to the hospital. I literally was whitewater rafting down the Nile River in Uganda, down one of the longest rapids on Earth. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm really living. I'm definitely taking the risks. I'm doing it. I'm living in a rural farming village, teaching organic farming. I'm definitely living. And I was like, but was I really loving? This would hurt. Because I was like, oh, I started to think of all the moments with friends or family, my close, immediate family, mom or dad, those moments where you could just tell them, hey, I really love you. And it's like, they're probably busy, or it doesn't matter. Oh, I'm busy, or oh, something's going on. And I was like, wow, there were definitely moments I could have poured my love into every person around me. Even the people there helping me. I remember being grumpy some of the days just because how I felt. I'm like, man, I could pour more love into these people right smack in front of my face right now. So I started doing it. And I was like, matter. Fuck. I don't know. Will I matter? Will people remember me? I was like, my parents will, hopefully. My grandma, my grandparents, my family, they'll remember me. But do I matter in the world to anything besides that? I was like, I don't know. What could I do that would, create some type of little ripple in the world that people would remember? It would keep going as soon as I'm gone. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, I need to design a type of day-to-day life that at the end of every day, I can answer yes to those 3 questions. And I started to redesign what I call my ideal day, how I would start to live daily life so that literally, if I were living in this way, I could say I lived fully, I loved deeply, and I did something that fucking mattered every single day. And so we started to reshape that. Now that's evolved over the years. Nowadays, we do that through the way we show up in the world. When I have an opportunity to love on a human being, I pour every ounce of my heart and soul into him every chance I get. I don't care if it's a random stranger or one of my longest best friends, or my wife or our family. Like, I pour every ounce of love I can into them every chance I get, because I don't know how long they're going to be there or how long I'm going to be here. Living fully, I say yes to opportunities that, fuck, I don't know how I'm going to make it work. I don't know how it's going to come together. I don't even know if it's going to be fun in the end. But I say yes to stuff all the time, because I want to know that if that was my last day, I said yes to life, and I found a way to shake that thing for a hell of a ride, And did I matter? This is something that we wrapped our business mission around. And I said, hey, every day, it's really simple. We're going to produce content, good thoughts, good ideas. We're going to push them into the world via every platform we can get access to. And the whole goal is to help people become a little bit happier, healthier, stronger, and more fulfilled human beings. That's it. And if our goal is to reach the person that needs us most in the moment they need us with the message they need. We don't know who they are, where they are, what they're going through, but our belief is every day, if we push as hard as we can at content in every direction, somewhere in the world, a little message is going to drop into someone's life, and they're going to go, oh shit, I needed that. And I'm blessed to say that every single day we get little messages on all different formats via physical mail, email, Snapchat, all this stuff. Everywhere we push content, we get little messages from people saying, hey, I really needed that today. Thank you. And I say, hey, we've done it. If we were to die today, we could high five ourselves on the way out and know, hey, we lived fully, we loved deeply, we did something that mattered.
But, wow, man. Okay, so much of what you were talking about brought up so many different points for me. Number one is just gratitude, right? A bunch of things you were saying lead to the conclusion that gratitude is an incredible way of receiving more in this lifetime, of having more, of being more happy, right? So I just want to point that out. And another thing that you were talking about makes me realize how easy it is to close versus how hard it is to open. A real warrior has to open through life even when shit is hard. Like, imagine, we all know the world is in a tough place, right? The hardest thing to do is to know the world is in a tough place and say, bring it on anyway, open up to it anyway. It's way easier to close down. It's way easier to blame other people, to just completely take responsibility off of ourselves instead of truly opening our hearts, our souls, and having a desire to give our energy back to the planet, And the last thing I wanted to say is, which is what you were talking about, it's what your microphone says here, learn it, live it, give it, which I have to change the camera to see that. Learn it, live it, give it there. The giving it part is so important. Like, one thing that happened to me, and also what I've learned about the 12-step program, I've never done the 12-step program, but I know a lot of friends who have. That 12th step is, now that you know all the rules and all the messages here, find someone to give your energy to help them. Because the people who created the 12-step program learned that when they would help other people, they would be way less inclined to drink themselves. And this is the way humanity is helping each other. This is the way we can make it out of this hellhole that we may be in, as far as toxicity and misery, is that when you actually help, for me, when I give my energy to another being who's struggling, I'm out of my own story. I'm out of my own BS, my own desires and wantings, and my own story. And I just put my energy into someone else's story, and that completely transforms my life, and it continues to transform my life as I give my energy to other people. So all of those things totally resonate with all of the things that you mentioned in the past 10 minutes or so. So yeah, badass, awesome.
Very cool, man.
Cool.
It's true.
Yeah. So I want to ask you one last question, and then we'll wrap up. I've made a few videos in the past couple weeks about money, and we're talking about all of these things like giving back to humanity, detoxing, spirituality, wellness, blah, blah, blah. And there were all these comments I was getting on my YouTube channel about people saying, how can you make money and be spiritual? How can you, and I had to call BS on it. I made this whole video about how money is an exchange of energy, how we can have wealth and riches and still be spiritual, still be intact with humanity. And anyway, I'm curious on your thoughts about money and how it is to live a spiritually fulfilled life and also be a businessman at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So again, go back to role models. Who is able to do both? Lots of people, when they think of spirituality and giving and caring, they think of someone like a Mother Teresa, very giving and caring and loving, at least from the perception that people have. And so if you look at her, what was her relationship with money? Well, she had a foundation, nonprofit, so it wasn't for profit, but she was able to have about over $1 million, I think it was 1.2 million a month on average, was being donated and flowing through her organization to take care of all the different orphanages and caring centers and all the mission that she was up to. So most people who are saying like, oh, you can't be spiritual and have access to lots of capital, she had about $1 million a month coming through, and she was literally taking care of thousands of little humans all over the world through the opportunity, through driving the donations, and then using it for good. One thing that I look at, I was talking to a friend of mine who has a business. He's very smart. He went to Harvard, got his MBA. He started a company and sold it to Google and made millions of dollars. And his newest venture is running negative. And I looked at him and I said, listen, I don't care if you want to make profit yourself, like you have enough money, you don't have to worry about money, I get it. But to create an unsustainable business model is not fair to the overall mission and community that you're building. So what does that mean? That means if you stop funding it out of your own pocket, it won't last. Therefore, it's not real. It's all dependent on you, which makes you feel like a superhero. But that's not fair to the community, because there's one point of single failure that could happen. You die, or your money somehow disappears and evaporates, and all of a sudden the whole community's gone. It's very selfish to set it up that way. Set this up so that it's actually stirring enough profit. Reinvest the profit. Or if you don't want profit, then take the profit that comes from it and reinvest it into the community. I have family who does this, where they'll go do something that stimulates millions of dollars in profit, and then they'll turn around and provide millions of dollars worth of meals and millions of meals to the community that they were just in. And they're like, hey, there's nothing wrong with making profit. Use it to do something great. And the truth is, with money, it only amplifies that you already are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a giving person, you give the person more money, they'll give more. If you're a stingy, devilish bastard, like, you'll do more devilish things with the money. If you're, it just amplifies whoever you really are on the inside. So
it reveals you. It doesn't
I
make
think
you, right?
It's fuel.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I look at, one of my favorite quotes when it comes to money, is that there's two sides of this. One, if you want to realize, going back to that little chart I drew, you are the 1%. You are the 1%. If you're watching this and you have access to this technology, you're the 1% of the planet. Now, knowing that, it doesn't mean not to go for more. It doesn't mean, okay, I'm the 1%, I give up, I'll just settle for 38 grand a year, I'm totally cool. No, go for as much as you want, as long as you're coming from a place of abundance that says I already have enough. And that's a tricky balance to play from, because if you can find the place where you already have enough and you don't need it, you're just doing it to do it, have at it. Get as much as you want. But if you can't find that place that says I am enough, I have enough, and I'm loved enough, that have enough. If you're like, I don't have enough, and that's why you're chasing it, I'll be honest, ask someone who has a ton. Like Jim Carrey has that quote, I wish everyone could become rich and famous and realize it ain't it. If you don't feel like you have enough, that's the challenge. You got to fill that up first, and that's psychological and emotional. It's not really due to resources. It was one of the greatest gifts I learned. It doesn't mean you don't want it. Go get it if you want it, but you don't need it. And when you have that feeling that you don't need it, all of a sudden you're free. That's the psychological place to come from. Can you get to the place where you realize you don't need it? You might still want it, but you sure as heck don't need it. And at that point, you become free from that psychological constraint. And that level is now fulfilled, so you can move to the next one. I have enough. I'm loved enough. Are you loved enough? Where do you get love from? Do you find it in a place that truly is sustainable? Can you give it to yourself? Can you fill up? And then finally, I am enough. Self-confidence. You feel that you are enough as a human, what you contribute. You matter, to say it simply. And when you look at these three needs, all of a sudden now you have a place that you can evolve and go for more. And when you meet people who have enough, are enough, and are loved enough, they'll go chase whatever goal they want just because it's fun, and they don't need anything from the goal. They're there to just make the goal happen. Now, what's neat about that, one last thought here, the concept, we created a podcast around this because I kept asking people, what do you think the world needs more of? And people tell me stuff like The world needs more love. The world needs more transparency. The world needs more caring. The world needs more, you were on the show, cleansing.
Yeah.
The world needs more, all these things, more love, more humor, more laughter, more connection, more this. And I'm like, okay, great. If the world needs more of that, why don't you do that as your business? And people always look at you and go, love, you can't get paid for love. Like Mother Teresa pulled it off. She didn't get paid for it, but she raised money around the concept of love and gave it to people she cared about. And like laughter, you can't get paid for laughter. Like Kevin Hart and the freaking Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are pulling it off right now. It seems to be working out well for them. They're making people laugh and grossing the most amount of money in box office history. And there's been plenty of comedians before them. There'll be plenty after them. People who bring laughter to people's lives and that cause them. And people try to argue every one of these things. But the truth is, every one of them could generate a massive amount of ROI for you in the financial field if you want it to. And then just use the money to reinvest in things you really care about. Mm-hmm. You don't have to keep it. You don't have to stick it in a bank account and hoard. Take how much you need plus a little bit more. Take everything else and give it back to the world in ways that you really believe in.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, let's wrap it up there. That is epic show. Guys, sorry you keep seeing my screen pop up because whatever happened, my computer, I don't know, maybe the dense content just took up more gigabytes than... but yeah, anyway, epic show. Where can people find you? Why don't you plug everything right here? I'll put it in the info description as well.
Sure. Check the show notes. Jairek is a little bit hard to spell, but if you go to Google and try to do your best at Jairek Robbins, it'll redirect you to me. It knows how to spell my name. You'll see this mug in the pictures if you got the right guy. Find me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Come and join our website, JarekRobbins.com. It has all kinds of free goodies and stuff. We do blogs weekly where we push this content out. If you're on iTunes, in the next week or so, we're going to have our new podcast app. It's called What the World Needs More Of. Look that show up. We'll have 3 episodes a week splashing out with amazing content contributors like our friend here. Thank you for being a guest on the show. Yeah. And yeah, just come hang out.
Sweet. Alrighty, guys.